I'm deleting most of my legendary armor, but it's not because I've gone crazy. There's a type of armor that I value more and have spent hours farming. What is it? Artifice Armor. If you care even a little bit about min-maxing your armor builds, then this is worth grinding for. Artifice Armor has been in the game for just over a year now, and for most of that time I didn't really find it necessary to get it, as it always seemed like it was only beneficial for PvE. You see, this type of armor granted an additional mod slot that could only use artifact mods, making it a pretty niche requirement for builds. Don't get me wrong, I love PvE in this game, but there is rarely any scenarios that would make me interested in using more artifact mods. This is all about to change inside of Lightfall. Make sure you stick around for the end of the video so you can see what build setups I used on each character to farm this activity. Anyways, we recently found out that there was going to be some changes coming to build crafting and that the Artifice Armor was also going to be adjusted, based on an article that stated that starting in Lightfall, Artifice Armor will have a new unique mod slot that grants 3 additional stat points to your character stats like strength, mobility, intellect, and the other stats of course. Now, I know what you're thinking, that 3 stat points just doesn't sound like a lot, but when you add this up between 4 pieces of gear, that is just over an entire tier of stat increased for free. I'm sure you have seen many times when putting a build together that you notice a certain stat is ending with tier 9.
What the fuck is this piece of shit?
90 out of 100 rather than 100, thus giving you that next tier. Let me make it make sense. Anything in between tier 9 and tier 10 is wasted stat points. You only receive a benefit from actually hitting that tier. Knowing this, it isn't hard to understand why most players find it annoying to not see clean stat distributions. You just know you have not min-maxed as best as possible.
Oh, that's hot.
The opposite is true. One of the most exciting parts about armor farming is achieving triple 100s. This simply just makes you feel like you have achieved an endgame build. Why it matters is because having lower cooldowns can be a significant advantage in PvP, especially in things like health regeneration or grenade spamming. The same logic can be applied to PvE, of course. Now, ask the question, how do you get Artifice Armor and why should we farm for it this week? Well, Artifice Armor only drops from Master Dungeons when they are in rotation. Unfortunately, it does not drop from Master Raids. This week, Duality is in rotation, which is one of the easiest Master Dungeons to farm. The community chooses this dungeon specifically because the armor in the others has shown to not grant the same high stat armor that Duality does. So that's just some advice from my part. Your Artifice Armor drops from something like Spire of the Watch won't usually come with high stats compared to Duality. Another benefit the dungeon has is that the boss encounter drops 2 pieces of gear and both have a chance of being armor, which makes your drops chances for Artifice gear pretty high. I am aware that most people don't fully understand how to properly farm for the best gear. I don't want to dedicate this video to giving you a breakdown on how to get certain stats on your armor, but I will provide you with the most important mod, a mod that many top players like myself are using permanently to get armor that works inside of PvE and PvP. Alright, try to stick with me. So, Destiny breaks armor stats into 2 buckets. We have mobility, resilience, and recovery in one, then we have discipline, intellect, and strength in the other. You can only get 2 of these stats in each bucket to 100 at a time. The mod I was referring to earlier was the discipline mod on your Ghost Shell. With this equipped, we are telling the game we don't want the other 2 stats in our bucket. So when it comes to focusing the armor that you want, decide which 3 stats you don't care about. As an example, let's say that you want to try to get 100 mobility, 100 recovery, and 100 discipline. You don't care about resilience, intellect, or strength. Since 2 of those stats are in the bucket alongside discipline, you should put the discipline focused armor mod on your Ghost Shell. At that point, you just let RNGesus take the wheel and hopefully get that high mobility and recovery that you want. I have gotten most of the triple 100s built using this method, and it very much works with the Duality armor. Just an additional note here, by the way, is that it won't always grant you mobility. That one can drop at like +2. You know, it's just a really good way of getting the actual important stats. So as an additional note here, I only use mobility and recovery as an example. I was able to get high resilience gear with like 0 mobility stats also on my gear, so just keep that in mind. I figured this would be a decent time to end the video, but then I was thinking about my Twitch chat and the YouTube comments sections. You guys would be asking, Frabo, how can I be a PvE crackhead like you so I can get a bunch of armor? So for the rest of the video, I'm going to share my strats, and I hope this helps most of you. I'm not claiming for these strategies to be the best, so don't eat me in the comments below. I turned this into a fun idea, and it's actually quite an efficient way of showing how to play each character you want. Before we get into any of the builds, you first need to make sure you understand how to keep the boss checkpoint. Listen closely. At the boss fight, one of your fire team members needs to decide which character they care the least to farm on. Once they have decided, they switch to that character and rejoin your team at the checkpoint. It is essential that your team now starts the encounter and wipes. This saves the checkpoint to your fire team member's character they won't be using for farming. After the wipe, they can swap to the other character they do want to farm the gear on and clear it like you would normally. The same person switches back to the character they aren't farming on and loads into the encounter where the other two members can join right back, rinse and repeat. It's that simple. Alright, let's get to farming. So on Titan, we made a bonk build, we made a pure DPS build with Hunter, and a double fusionade build with the Warlock. As a side note, it was totally unintentional that all three ended up being solar subclasses, but they were just too good for this activity. Titan was an ad clearing monster. Running Synthos Cephs with the Tiny Hammer and Sunspots, we were able to smash everything in our path while also keeping ourselves alive through the health region from melee kills. For the class setup, we used Roaring Flames and Sol Invictus, along with the Fragments, Ember Empyrean, Wander Solace, and Torches. Since we were primarily using the mini hammer, healing nades made it even easier to stay alive. With this class setup, feel free to use your super for ad clear since it isn't necessary for DPS. Some important armor mods to go along with were Melee Willmaker, Will of Life, and Font of Might. For Hunter, we decided to use the Star Eater Scales build with Blade Barrage. Since the damage window for Kaito is pretty short, on your mark, knock him down, make for great added clear and DPS aspects since they allow for tons of explosive knives to be thrown, which are both good for added clear and proccing Radiant during damage. Any increase to reload speed is beneficial in any scenario as well. As for fragments and mods, they were pretty much identical to the setup we had on Titan. However, an important change was running orb generating perks on our helmet, as Star Eater Scales needs those orbs for the bonus damage. Lastly, Warlock, the character we had the most fun with, we used Starfire Protocol. The nade spam was just unreal. It was great for both add clear and damage. Pair this with Empowering Rift to get your nade back, as well as Touch of Flame so the fusion nades double explode, and Icarus Dash to save yourself from falling off the map when the freaking Bell Keepers knock you off. Unlike the other characters, we did change the fragments a bit. We used Ember of Char, Searing, Wander, and Ashes to allow us to cast constant Scorch and Ignitions. An armor mod that was important to use was a double Ashes to assets so that we could get our well back quickly and spam supers. With multiple Warlocks running this build, you blow up everything including Kaito. When it comes to weapons, we pretty much used the same loadouts on every character. We had at least one person on Witherhoard running Weaken Clear, the others were switching from Arbalest or Witherhoard and using whatever primary they wanted. On screen, I'll show you the weapons that I had fun with. The most important weapon here was Cataclysmic with bait and switch. With all of this, we were easily able to 2-bell Kaito, allowing for efficient encounter clears to maximize how many drops we were getting. All in all, we ran for about 9 hours and we were able to replace a significant amount of armor in our vaults with Artifice replacements. You have the rest of the week before February 14th to farm this armor, and I highly suggest you do so. If you have enjoyed this video and would like to see more content like this, let me know by dropping a comment and a like on the video. We'll talk more in the next one.